Alright guys, so hopefully you watched my last tutorial, number 68, and now you're watching the 69th tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be finishing up the program that, well, I don't know if we're going to be finishing it, but we're going to be continuing the program that we started in the last tutorial. So in the last tutorial what we did is we basically built the main functionality for our program. The only thing that we didn't do is handle the other items except for 4. So I already told you guys that what this loop does is it tests this variable what they want, and if it's equal to 1 it should print out the plain items. If it's equal to 2 it should print out the helpful items. If they enter the number 3 then it should print out the items that are harmful to the character. So what we want to do is we want to test this what they want variable for 1, 2, or 3. Now what we can do is make a bunch of different if statements, but remember I told you guys, whenever you're testing a single variable for multiple values, it's better to use a switch statement. Now a switch statement takes one parameter, the variable, what they want, and it tests it against a bunch of different cases. So let's go ahead and finish this by, we need the curly braces right here, and inside the curly braces of the switch statement we write all those different cases. So we go ahead and we first write, in the case of 1, what do we want to do? And we're going to be wanting to display these items, and we can write all the code right here, but since we're going to be displaying the items multiple times, it's better to build a function later on. So let's go ahead and just, again, I didn't build this function yet, we're going to be building it later on, but let's go ahead and build a function called display items, and whenever we enter 1 we're going to pass in the parameter 1. Now display items, like I said, is going to be a function that takes one parameter. Depending on what parameter it takes, it knows what items to print out. So whenever we display items with the parameter 1, it's going to print out the plain items. So of course, remember we add break after every case so it doesn't go to the rest of the cases. And let me just go ahead and copy this 2 more times. So in the case of 2 and in the case of 3. So if what they want is equal to 2, then we want to display items with the parameter 2. If they enter 3, that means that they want to print out the harmful items, so we'll go ahead and write a function display items that takes the parameter 3. Now check it out. This main function is done completely. We don't have to do anything else to this main function. The only thing we have to do is build this display items function. Pretty cool, huh? So let me go ahead and come down here, and the first thing, like I said, that I like to do whenever I'm building a function is add a comment. Now I'll just go ahead and put display items function. Now this function, it's only going to print out stuff on the screen. That's its only job, to display items. So let's go ahead and make void as a return type. We're not getting any information back. It's just going to print out something. It's just going to, do the dirty work for us. So it's void. We're not asking for anything back in return. We're just asking it to do something. So now let's go ahead and write display items. And of course, remember, it needs to know what items you want. 1, 2, or 3. It basically needs to know what choice did you enter, 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to be passing it in an integer parameter, just like that. Now, well, the first thing I want to do before I continue is go ahead and prototype my function. And remember, to prototype your function one last time, go ahead and copy the header and paste it right above your main. And the reason we prototype functions one more time is because whenever we come across it right here in our main program, it knows that it's a function that we made later on right down there. Hopefully you guys watched my series before and you should know that. But anyways, let's go ahead and build this display items function. So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to have access to that file where all the items are. And remember, this is the file right here with all the items in it, and whatever this is, the effect of energy on our character or whatever. So remember, we already know how to open a file to gain access to it, and that's through an ifstream object. And by the way, before I even finish typing that, make sure you have included your fstream. This is pretty much the header file that allows you to have access to the files. So in order to read information from a file, we need to make an if stream object. And just go ahead and name your object, objects file. By the way, I named this file objects, so that's why I'm naming this objects file. And of course, we can put this on two different lines, but it takes the optional constructor of what file do you want to associate this object to. And we want to associate this object with a objects.text file. That's the text file that I just showed you guys. Now after this, we need to make two variables. The first variable is going to store the name of the object, and the second variable is going to store, the power or the energy, whatever you want to call this thing. I'll call it power. So the first variable is going to be a string variable, and it's going to store the name of the object. The next variable is going to be a double variable, and this is going to store the power of the object. So now what we can do is, the first thing we want to test is what choice did they enter. So we're going to be making a bunch of different if statements. We can make a switch statement, but I think if will look a little bit neater. So we'll say, alright, if the choice they entered, which is x, is equal to 1, then check it out. That means that they want to display the plain items. In other words, they want to display the items that has 0 effect on our character. So if the choice they entered is equal to 1, what do we want to do? Well, we want to go ahead and first, here's what we're going to do. We're going to loop through each object. We're going to loop through this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. Each time we loop through, we're going to want to check if the power is equal to 0. If the power is equal to 0, then we're going to want to go ahead and print it out. So it's going to say, alright, loop through this one, print it out. Loop through this one, don't print it out, don't print it out, print it out, print it out, So that's what it's basically going to do. So the first thing we need to do is loop through each object. And in order to do that, if you remember from, let's see, I want to say 2 tutorials ago, we can just go ahead and make a while loop. And in this while loop, just go ahead and write, come on, there we go. I was waiting for it to pop up. Go ahead and write your object file, and then go ahead and we're going to store the first thing in name, and we're going to store the second thing in power. And this is going to loop through as long as your file is open. So it's going to say, alright, loop through the first thing, store it in name, and store it in power. So now what we want to do is we want to check, alright, whenever you loop through an item and the power is equal to, I'll just go ahead, I don't want to add that space. If the power is equal to 0, then go ahead and print it out. So cout name of the object, and then we'll just go ahead and add a little space, and then the power, and then we'll go ahead and end that line. So basically we're going to be looping through this whole file. Whenever it gets to an item where the power is equal to 0, print it out on the screen. Now let's go ahead and copy this 2 more times, and we'll say, alright, remember x is the choice that they entered. So if they entered the choice of number 2, then they want to print out the helpful items, just like that. So whenever they want to print out the helpful items, we know that the power must be greater than 0, because remember, a helpful item is like a candy or a soda, where the power is greater than 0. So what this is going to do is, whenever they enter the choice 2, print out the items that have a power greater than 0. And whenever they enter the choice 3, print out the items that have power of less than 0. And these items are, a ninja, meth, and a dirty needle. All those items that are harmful items have a power of less than 0. Right like that. So basically, our program is complete. This is ready to run. And I know you guys are just itching for me to press this build and run button and see this program go to work, but I'm actually going to be doing that in the next tutorial, because first I want you guys to watch one of my other videos, kind of sucker you into that one, and also I'm going to be showing you guys that it does indeed run perfectly. Actually, in between these videos, I'm going to check for errors and make sure I didn't mess up anything. And I'm also going to be talking through you guys one more time to clear up any, confusing things that, or any questions that you guys might have. So thank you guys for watching. I cannot wait to press this button. So I guess you guys are going to have to see me press it in the next tutorial. So thank you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next tutorial.